All right, welcome ladies and if there are any gents who snuck in, to our very first Women in Mining South Africa Entrepreneurs Masterclass. This has been a while in the making, and we've heard the voices of our membership in terms of asking for this kind of a talk. So here we are today. So welcome to this first WiMSA Entrepreneur Masterclass. We have a wonderful speaker lined up. That's Keitumetse Lekaba, the business doctor. May I please ask, ladies, that you mute yourself through the talk, unless you're called on for a comment or a question, and we will have time for that in the talk. And with that, I'd like to hand over to our WiMSA chairperson, Petra Dupasani, who's going to say a few words and introduce our speaker this evening.
Thanks, Isavia. And thanks to everybody for joining us this evening. So as Isavia was saying, the idea for this class was born actually as a result of our mentorship program. So as we were busy getting people in for our mentorship program, which started at the beginning of this year, one of the themes that was consistently coming through was having an entrepreneurship type masterclass as well.
Most women in mining.
Thank you. So that's where the idea was born. And I'd like to really thank Savia for putting this together. She is almost our entrepreneurship subcommittee of one. So thanks very much to Savia for putting this together and organizing this. And we're also planning to have a number of additional events during the course of the year around entrepreneurship. So please watch our social media and you will get more information about all of our events that are coming up. I can also point that next week we've got another talk coming up on Thursday, and it's around imposter syndrome. So if you want to join in for next week's talk, you're also welcome to join for that as well. Cool, so I'd like to introduce you to Keitumetse Lekaba. She is the current head of Enterprise and Supply Development, or ESD, at I Am an Entrepreneur. In her current role, she leads strategy development and implementation of enterprise and supply development programs. Prior to joining I Am an Entrepreneur, she worked for Tysis Capital, Sage Accounting, Siaka Consulting, Nolan's Johannesburg, and Horwath Leveson Boner. She has over 15 years of experience in finance, accounting, auditing, tax, SME funding, SME development, business coaching, and SME strategy development. She has implemented ESD programs for companies such as Exaro Mining, Harmony Gold, Sasol, Coca-Cola Beverages, South Africa Reckitt Beckensur, Barloworld, and many more. Keitumetse holds a BCom accounting degree from the University of Johannesburg with an honours specialising in tax. She is a co-founder of the MediWell Medical Centre in Dainfern, as well as the founder of the Karabo Business Solutions. Outside of finance and SME development, she is the founder and chairperson of Goddess Girls, an NGO facilitating girl-child mentorship in Soweto. Keitumetse has a passion for human and business development, business coaching, and sustainability of SMEs. She's an exceptional leader with a charisma and extensive knowledge in her field. So I'd like to welcome Keitumetse. With that sort of track record, I think she'll be able to answer all of your questions around entrepreneurship and what you should be keeping in mind when starting your own business. So thank you very much, Keitumetse, for joining us this evening, and I'm going to hand over to you now. Thank you.
Thanks, Petra, and thanks for that lovely introduction. Also, I'd like to commend Women in Mining, WiMSA, for the mentorship program that you're running. As you know, the company that I am with, I'm an entrepreneur. We are huge believers in mentorship, because entrepreneurship is really a lonely journey, and entrepreneurs really, it helps them to walk alongside experts that have done it and that are doing it very well. So well done on that mentorship program. Very, very important for entrepreneurs. And so I'll share, I'm going to go through call it 45 minutes. I have slides that I will share with everyone. And please, this masterclass must be an interactive masterclass. So I think at any point, I don't like to limit people. So, and I know people forget their questions. So when you do have a question, just pop it into the participation block, and Eusebia will track all the questions, and when it comes to question time, we will answer all the questions appropriately. And even if you're thinking of something that at that point we're really not speaking about, or we haven't gotten there yet, just pop in your question and we will get to it when the time permits. I don't need to reintroduce myself. I've been introduced very nicely by the ladies at WiMSA. My name is Keitumetse Lekaba. It is such an honor to be hosting this masterclass for all the entrepreneurs, ladies and men, the men that have snuck in. So we'll start with the viewpoint. The viewpoint is really, why are we having this masterclass on procurement, and why are SMEs and why are entrepreneurs struggling with procurement opportunities in the country? So I want to read something that really will start the discussion for us today. And just to mention also, this discussion is not a new discussion. And funny, I found a research article from 2017 that had the same viewpoint that we are discussing now. The research was done by Canadian International Resources and the Mining Shared Value Ventures for Engineers. So this is clearly a problem that has been there for a very long time in the country, and not only in the country, in Africa as a whole. So let me go through the viewpoint, and then we will start our discussion. Okay. South Africa has one of the largest endowments of mineral resources in the world. However, in most cases, decades of mining activity have not created corresponding advances in social and economic development across the continent. The mining sector represents a significant opportunity for economic development, capacity building, increased employment, better conditions of employment, and poverty reduction. Local procurement of goods and services by mining companies has tremendous development potential for countries in South Africa and Africa as a whole. And as host countries, purchasing of local goods and services by mining companies create jobs, promote skills, allows for technology transfers, and integrates local companies into global value chains. So the question becomes, why are so many companies struggling to access local procurement opportunities? Let's dispel today the myths, state the facts, and assist each other in trying to find ways to access these opportunities, as well as try and find recommendations and solutions that we ourselves can recommend to the industry. I'm going to stop sharing a little bit so I can move my slides accordingly. There you go, technology. See, oh, there you go. That slide is really what I have just read now in dispelling the myths, stating the facts, and helping each other for access these procurement opportunities. And very interesting, I found while I was doing my research and how far this dates back on how SMEs have really struggled in procuring in mining houses. I found out it's not only South Africa that has the problem or the issue. In Zimbabwe, they are working on a procurement act that is creating a new regulation to facilitate local procurement in mining. Not only Zimbabwe, in Nigeria, Nigeria has amended its local procurement law to favor local goods across the sector. In Kenya, in the Kenyan Mining Act, which came into law on May 17, 2016, it introduced a range of provisions, which also included preference for local product, including materials and products made in Kenya, services offered in Kenya, and companies or businesses owned specifically for Kenyans. Djibouti, their new mining codes, it also continues to be revised to include emphasis on local procurement. So with that said, where are we in South Africa regarding the procurement in the mining sector specifically? In our country, BEE codes is the first procurement compliance document that was set to enable SMEs and entrepreneurs to take advantage of local procurements and to have and so that businesses and mining houses have targets in which they can procure from the local communities. Secondly, we have the Mining Charter, which is the second procurement compliance document that exists. And this really has very similar characteristics of the BEE scorecard. And this is why recently you will see they are trying to marry the Mining Charter and the BEE scorecard for them to speak to each other. At current present, the scorecard applies to all businesses in the country, and the Mining Charter is specific to the mining industry. The Social Labour Plan, which is referenced by the Mineral and Petroleum Resource Development Act, is the third and final compliance document. So the SLP is mandatory and drafted by mining companies, and it outlines their commitment to local hiring, local procurement, and social investments. Now the question is, with these three acts in play, how are they helping SMEs and entrepreneurs to get into procurement opportunities? Within the mining, within the BEE scorecard, we have the ESD, which is the enterprise and supply development, and we've seen some mining houses in the country trying to help local procurement through ESD. And really in the ESD, the supply development is when mining houses, and I think it's very important for everyone that is in the industry to know and access these ESD opportunities. Supply development is when a mining house supports a company that is already in their supply chain, whether through training or through funding or whatever support that the company needs. If you are supported by the mining house, it would fall under supplier development. And if you have no association with the mining house currently and you are getting support from the mining house, then you would be referred to as enterprise development. And obviously we do enterprise development so that you can eventually be a supplier of that specific mining house that is investing in you as the SME. So the mining regulation, there are really opportunities in the regulations to support local procurement. So we go back to our question of why are these opportunities not being used? And we've seen that from a government perspective, we have the Department of Mineral Resources. From a mining legislative perspective, we've got the Act. From a development perspective, we've got the National Development Plan. From an economic empowerment legislation, we've got the BEE scorecard. This is where ESD, enterprise and supply development, falls in. And as well as from the mining charter perspective, we have our mining charter scorecard, as well as our SLP that we've been talking about. So I think very, very important from a legislative perspective, there are really tools in place to help with the procurement aspect and to help in getting locals to procure in certain mining houses. So while we're here, I'm going to pause. Was that you, Eusebia? Okay.
That wasn't me, Keitumetse.
Okay. I think someone just unmuted. That's fine. We'll continue. So then we move in, while we've seen the legislation and we've seen that legislation really has put in place resources to help procurement with the procurement process and to help getting people to procure from local suppliers. Now we go into the common factors that really influence mining houses and how do they develop their own procurement strategies and how do they develop their own procurement processes. So there are two things that, or two common factors that we've identified, a reactive common factor and a proactive common factor. And really, we really don't want mining houses to go with the reactive common factor because you are really just putting out fires because of something that has happened. We want mining houses and we want mining companies to go with the proactive factor in procuring and proactive factors in really putting together the procurement strategies and how they are going to procure from local SMEs. Proactive. It really involves taking into account a long-term view to stakeholder engagement. So you're not waiting for a strike to happen. You're not waiting for anything bad to happen. this is when companies really take a lead to get through the social problems and take a lead. They almost preempt the issues that come into play and take a lead to try and put focus on local people and local procurement at that point. With the reactive factor, you're really reacting to immediate external pressures, whether be it from community or government. And really, this doesn't help the SMME at all, because all you are doing is trying to put out a fire of that specific point or at that specific time. So it doesn't look at a holistic long-term view of things. It only looks at fixing the solution for now. So we really want mining houses to look at a proactive economy and a proactive social development strategy to help SMMEs in procuring from the mining houses. So I went and did a little bit of research and looked at a few mining houses and how they really do their procurement when they are selecting SMMEs for local procurement and SMMEs to fit into the mine's value chain. So I adopted the figure from Exara's procurement process, where from the procurement process, I will then, going forward in this masterclass, we will look at two elements: the pre-assessment and what happens once you have once you get the feedback and what should be happening at the feedback stage. So you'll see really from the slide, you have the pre-assessment where everybody goes and puts in their RFP, their tenders, and then you have the pre-qualification, which might involve either more than 51% Black owned or a certain BEE level, certain resources that are required here. And then once you've been selected for pre-qualification, then you will go through an audit. And the audit is really to verify that everything that you have put in the tender is true and correct and really reflects what reflects the status of your business at that point. So I think at this point, before we even move from the audit perspective, I really want us to go back to basics with the pre-qualification and the pre-assessments. And this is really where, ladies, at this point, and gentlemen, at this point, we have to say and we have to mention that, you know, often it's at this point where people are saying, but I'm Black owned, why am I not getting the opportunity? But we are female owned, why are we not getting the opportunity? Our business has youth ownership, why are we not getting the opportunity? Unfortunately, at the pre-assessment stage, your Black ownership, youth ownership does not qualify you to get through to pre-qualification while you're still doing pre-assessment. So it is very important to look at your businesses beyond the statutory requirements at the pre-assessment stage before you even get to pre-qualification stage. So I'm going to take you through a couple of things that are going to assist you going forward to get past the pre-assessment stage, to move into the pre-qualification stage, and eventually into the audit stage and verification stage to be able to access these opportunities. And before we start, I want us to go back to what are the perceptions at this stage. And I've also spoken to a few procurement officers. I've spoken to entrepreneurs in this field. So from an entrepreneur perspective, from the entrepreneur side, the general perspective is that corruption is a big issue in our country. And entrepreneurs have a perception that if you are not friends with the procurement officer, you will not get the tender because procurement officers eat generally with their friends. In-house, the mining houses are saying it is not easy to find local suppliers that have sufficient capacity. And we are going to break down this word capacity in the next slides. Mining houses have said it's very hard to find and identify potential local suppliers. Government has also said, sorry, not government, the mining houses have also said local suppliers that are capable of doing the jobs don't often exist. And then they've also said, the mining houses, capacity of existing local suppliers is too low and cannot often get the job done that we need. And what have the entrepreneurs also said? The entrepreneurs' perceptions are also, it is easier to get the RFQs if you're a woman, youth, or Black owned. So let's move into what we're really going to go into detail about the pre-assessment and going back to basics of being selected to eventually being in the audit processes of procurements. Compliance. And these are really add-ons that are not specific to mining. It's really business principles for any other industry where these will help you to get into the doors and to also get a chance at getting the opportunity in the mining. Okay, compliance. Is your company a legal citizen of the country? Are you compliant with CRPC? Are you compliant with SARS? Also, I have to mention here, SARS doesn't offer letters of good standing anymore. SARS now gives you a tax PIN to give if someone is looking for your tax compliance status. And what that PIN does, at any specific point in time, whoever is looking for the information and whoever you have given the PIN to, they can go using that PIN that you've given them to check your current tax compliance status at any point in time. So this now takes it away from entrepreneurs by being compliant once a year to get a letter of good standing, and then after they get the letter of good standing, then they remain non-compliant until the next time they need the letter of good standing. So at this point, anyone at any point can go and look at your tax compliance and how your tax compliance is doing at that point, which includes your income tax, your PAYE, your VAT, and any other taxes that are related to your business at that specific time. And then we have the technical compliance. When you're submitting those tenders, are you giving the indication to the mining house that you are technically compliant? You are compliant with the applicable laws related to the type of business that you are running. If ISO is required, are you stating that you are ISO accredited? CIBD grading, if that's required, are you stating that you are your CIBD grading? Health and safety, very important. Are you stating those your technical compliance in your RFPs and when you are applying for these RFPs? Commercial competence. Can you deliver the quality goods and services that has been required by the mining house? And I think often this is where the mining house comes with capacity issue, because if they are looking for a specific capacity, what entrepreneurs often lack to do is partner with each other to prove that they have the right capacity to give the mining house the relevant goods and services that they require. Also, no, there is no problem in a tender briefing, no problem in an RFQ to say, this is our capacity is 1,000 goods at the moment, but if the capacity of the mining house is 2,000, we can access the additional capacity from Keitumetse Pty Limited or our partner Lekaba Pty Limited. You have to prove that you can deliver the goods and services that are required by the mining house. And also for most corporates, companies that are, if you are a company that's already in the supply chain, this is where you can also ask for assistance from a supply development perspective and say to the mining house, this is our capacity at the moment, but if we can access supply development opportunities, either through funding, we would be able to up our capacity to this point. So even if you don't have the capacity at that point, it's very important, I think, and also very honest to mention that my capacity reaches this limit, but I can reach a different capacity if I'm given the chance or given certain resources, which are A, B, C, and D. And then we have strategy. Do you have a business strategy and focus? Or are you applying for every RFQ that comes out from the mining house? I think the strategy thing also becomes important because what mining houses often do is class the type of businesses that you are running. Are you doing dust suppression? Are you doing contract mining? Are you doing transport? Are you doing drilling? Are you doing engineering? Really, you probably can't do everything. You possibly could, but realistically, you have to pick your niche so that you are trusted in that specific niche, and the mining house can also trust you to perform those activities in the niche that you have picked for yourself. So when you are also applying for these RFQs and these tender documents, I think very, very important to give us your niche, your focus, and tell us where your strategy lies, because this is where you can also get assistance in development if you ever needed it. Because also if you are tapping everywhere and anywhere, it's very difficult to assist a business that is doing that. And then lastly, I really want us to unpack this capacity issue, because capacity really, it becomes tricky because there's a lot of moving elements to it. And it could be capacity through staff, employees, it could be capacity through equipment, it could be an asset, it could be capacity, a funding capacity at that point, access to cash, which also affects your capacity of growth and potential, and also your potential to increase capacity whenever the mine or whenever the company, the corporate that you're working with requires you to increase the capacity. So always answer, I think important to answer, and I'm going to go back to my notes because I don't want to miss any of these points that I want to make. Do you have the sufficient resource to fulfill the job? I think that question you really have to ask yourself right at the beginning. And if you do not have the right resources, you have to give the strategy or the solution of how you are going to mitigate that if and when you are given the contract. Because I think a lot of SMEs make the mistake of not mentioning how they will mitigate not having enough resources if they are given the contract. Because I think, like I said before, it's quite honest to state your capacity. It's quite honest to state what your resources can currently do for you at the moment, and to state how you can increase capacity if required. And a lot of the times, I think in most cases, the ability to meet expectations of tenders, including costs, become quite a huge issue. Because often you need startup capital, especially if you are not, you are typically not a big QSE or an SME that is making enough at the moment to have sufficient reserves to be able to go and buy new equipment or new assets if you are given the tender. And this also comes back to that point of, if you are given the tender, what is your solution, or what have you done, or what are you doing to ensure that when you do receive the tender, you will be able to deliver at the right capacity. Also processes. I think we often forget about our processes and our business processes when we are filling out these tender documents, because what happens with the processes is that a lot of our businesses are one-man, two-man owned. And if something happens to the owner, often people in the business don't know what to then do, which kills the business drastically. So if you have processes in place, and as a business owner, your business can run without you in the business, that is great, because then you don't have the key man risk that the mining houses are always complaining about and saying, but Keitu, if you are the only person in your business that knows what's happening, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, the whole contract or the whole project falls apart, then we'd have to find other people. But if the business has processes and you can really show that your business has proper processes in place and the business can run without you there, I think it really also helps just in terms of that trust that the mining houses are looking for when it comes to SMEs. And some companies, I mean, at this point, when they do announce, some SMEs have said, but why don't mining houses also announce on local radio stations and press releases? Because most of the tenders become closed tenders, and they run through closed processes where you then get invited to tender, which is important here because if you are trusted and people know your niche and know the goods and services that you can diligently, efficiently, and effectively supply to the mine, then you can always be invited to the tenders that are related to the niche of your business. So it becomes very, very important here to always have your niche and to make that known in that. And also, I think I wrote a quote here and it said, you know, a mining representative said, some companies will say they can do anything, but when you look at their certifications and education, they clearly aren't up to the job. Back to the niche, back to the niche, back to the strategy. So very, very important to have your strategy in place, very, very important to have your niche in place and brag about what it is you do. If you are a specialist in the one thing, I think it really helps also from a trust perspective to be able to give you opportunities in that specific field. So always make sure before we close on capacity, and I will pause a little bit for questions if there are any. So before we close on capacity, look at your staff. Do you have enough staff members? Do you have enough assets and resources to complete the jobs? Do you have enough funding and access to funding if additional resources are required? And do you have potential for growth? So if in 3 months within the contract, the mining house wants to increase your scope of work, are you able to do it within your own means? If not, what are your plans to make sure that within that process, you would be able to deliver whatever the tender or whatever the procurement opportunity is asking you to deliver? So I think very, very important there. With capacity, and I'm going to say it again, if you don't have the right capacity, always mention what your recourse or what your solution to the additional capacity is. Eusavia, I'm going to pause there and then we can take questions if there are any.
Yeah, thank you very much, Keitumetse. Really interesting so far. And there are 1 or 2 questions coming in through the chat. So I'm going to call out some of those and then I'll pause and give some of our members who are joining us today also an opportunity to ask 1 or 2 questions. So thanks, Keitumetse. I think maybe a common thing coming out in the chat, and I'm going to cite 2 questions that have come out, is around the lines, you know, you're speaking of commercial competence and you're speaking of capacity and so on. It's proving that before you've even got a step in the door. So one of the questions from Caroline Vanka, what steps does one follow to approach mining companies to become a service provider? So you did mention you know, get known for what you're doing, and then in a closed tender process, they may call you. But if you're not known at all, who do you approach? Yeah, and who do you speak to within the mining houses? Maybe we can start with that one, and then I'll follow up with 1 or 2 from the chat.
Okay, perfect. So just for Caroline, a lot of the mining houses, you are able to register as a vendor, which means you then become a potential procurement supplier to the mine. You register as a vendor to the mine, usually online. A lot of the mining houses do have online applications where you can register as a vendor. At the point that you have now registered as a vendor, which means you now have the chance to procure for the mine, then you can start receiving and start looking at what opportunities are there within the procurement space of the mine, and what are they opening up to the vendors. Because when you are looking for procurement opportunities, they're not going to come to you if you are not a vendor of the mine. So you have to almost be known. So the first step of being known is to apply to be a vendor for that specific mine, so that you have equal opportunity to access all the procurement opportunities that that specific mine has for you. And once you've applied as a vendor, you can also then start calling in to procurement officers and their teams to ask, I have registered as a vendor in October of 2020. I haven't yet received any opportunity. What is the delay, or what can I do to get these opportunities going for myself? Because sometimes it can be a very simple thing. Maybe you are not within, your business address is not within the parameters of the mining community. It becomes very small things that when they are doing the procurement, it blocks you at that pre-assessment stage. It could be your address, it could be the BE level, whatever it is. So just make sure, and often they do have call centers that you can call to ask, is my vendor application okay? Has it been received? And you don't rest until you have received your vendor number, which is your ID with that company.
Thank you for that, Keitumetse. Keitumetse, another one from the chat, and also along the lines of getting in as a small business. Why are new SMEs with no trading references not given preference in mining? And I think this comes down to, you're brand new, you don't have a track record. How do you get onto the radar?
All right. So on that one, what mining companies are starting to do, which is very, very good for local procurement and ensuring that small businesses are getting procurement opportunities within the mines, when they issue contracts to the big contractors, the enterprises, there's a certain clause that states that all the big contractors must subcontract. Most companies are using 30%. All the companies must subcontract a minimum of 30% to small businesses. So what we can also do to get into the door, before you even maybe go into the mine, look at other bigger companies than yourself that are procuring in the mine to subcontract from them, because then you can earn your track record and you can earn your experience through subcontracting. And then the mine, then you can start building your track record there. So I think subcontracting also, it's become very, very helpful for small businesses to gain training and just to get experience and their track record going. So look at the big companies and look at the companies that also approach the mine and ask them, which companies do you know that, or which companies have you guys mandated, or which companies have you guys contracted to give 30% of the work to locals? And then you can approach those companies to do whichever one is relevant to the business that you are doing. Then you approach them to subcontract you under their big contract. Because often you, as a small company, realistically, there are certain big projects they really cannot give to you. So the easier way is to get in through subcontracting, and you learn quite a lot. The subcontracting also helps with learning from what the established companies are doing.
Thanks for that, Keitumetse. Yeah, I think a targeted approach in the subcontracting, those are great ideas. So I just want to now open up to some participants.
Sure thing.
And we do have a hand up at the moment. Lufuno Rasweswe.
Okay.
Do you want to unmute and go ahead and ask Keitumetse a question or a comment?
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My question is on capacity. Normally, they would ask you what capacity you've got or percentage of capacity. I get confused as to what does that mean? Do you have to rate yourself as to if you think you do not have enough equipment or staff or funding, like you were saying, that you would rate yourself at a 60 or a 70, but if you feel that you're fully capacitated, do you rate yourself 100? Is that what it means when they ask the percentage of capacity?
Good question, Lufuno. I think before you even rate yourself, you need to look at that specific tender or the specifics that are required for that tender and rate yourself against that specific tender. So, which means that the capacity will not, your percentage capacity will not always be the same based on the requirements of each tender. So it has to be quite specific to that tender. And how you rate yourself, you can rate yourself either based on a percentage, but I actually would write I would write it out. If they've said in this contract, you're doing dust suppression, we need 3 dust suppressors on site 12 hours a day, or we need 2 shifts per day. Look at that and rate yourself according to that. If you only have 1, then you must say, I have 1 dust suppressor. So that the guys can also see that, because this is where also, I think from a capacity perspective, you can also probably get more of a subcontract instead of the main contract. Because often in the tenders, they will say, we need this, this is what we need, this is the level of resources that are required, and then you rate yourself according to what is required. So I would list them in detail, also just so that the tender, the person looking at the tender can see intent from you.
Thanks for that, Keitumetse. Thanks, Lufuno, for your question. Moving on, Letitia Cable. Have you got a question or a comment?
Hi, ladies. My question is, if it's a new company starting out, right? You have got no track record, but as the owner or the people that you have in that position that has had years of experience, does that count if you're looking at in terms of if you want to apply for a tender with no track record? Would the experience that your staff and the owners have also affect how they actually look at you?
That's a very good one, Letitia, and definitely your years of experience will count to your advantage. And you always need to mention, even though the company would have no experience in the form of the company getting its own contracts, the resources and the individuals involved in the company, their experience counts a lot. So you have to mention the experience, the years of experience, and even if you can, mention where you obtained that experience, because that also counts to your favor. Because if you've done the work for 10 years in a different company, that doesn't take away from your own company if you've now started your own company. And that is your company's now resource, and now your company's own advantage. So it definitely does count, and definitely something that you have to mention. So even when they ask you about experience, you have to write, owner or manager has 50 years, or collectively in the company, we have over 50 years experience in mechanical engineering. And we've done projects for the following companies. And you list who you've done projects with, even though you did it from a different company or from a different stable, because that is your experience and no one can take that away from you.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. Thanks, Keitumetse. Keitumetse, are you okay to do one more question from participants, and then we'll do the poll and proceed, and then we'll do a few more questions at the end.
Okay, let's do one more question. I see we are at 15:15, so we'll do one more question, and then I'll take another maybe 10 minutes to complete the dialogue, and then we can take more questions at the end.
Perfect. Thank you. Keitumetse?
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you, Keitumetse. Your presentation is proving to be very informative so far. I'd just like to ask, I find that a lot of calls or RFPs tend to be for a more technical perspective, and someone like me is more in the, I can say, social aspect with regards to community engagement, corporate social responsibility and such. In your experience, have there been RFPs in this regard? Thank you.
Thanks, Kotata, for that question. I think for you mainly, because the mining houses also, even from a BE perspective and a scorecard perspective, they have social corporate investment activities that happen within the mines all the time, especially in the host communities. So would be worthwhile definitely to rather approach that specific department to find out how you can access the procurement opportunities from that angle. And those procurement opportunities would likely come from a head office perspective as opposed from a locality perspective, because those CSI projects also through BE, it's become mandatory that they spend on the CSI project, and where they are doing it through implementation partners, definitely an RFQ would come out where they get implementation partners to help them with those CSI projects. So my advice to you would probably be to approach the CSI departments of the specific mines and just find out how you can get involved in the implementation of those projects, since that is the space that you are in, and how they can either, maybe it's not even an RFP, maybe it's a straight contract that they do with you. So just find out from the CSI departments.
Thanks.
Perfect. I think you, Xavier, you can do the poll, and then we can move on to conclude with the rest of the presentation.
Great, thank you, Keitumetse. Really insightful questions and answers to them. Thanks for that. Okay, ladies, we're going to do a little bit of a poll at the moment. All you got to do is you'll see some questions coming up on your screen, and please do answer them. This is just to get to know you a little bit better, first of all, and then secondly, to get your feeling on some of the content that Keitumetse has already spoken about. Some she will speak about, but it's really just to get some perception around some of the pertinent issues that we're talking about here today. So should come up on your screen at the moment. So I'm just going to give all of you about a minute and a half just to go through it and answer. In fact, Keitumetse, if you want to continue, then you can continue, and while people just sort of answer.
Okay, I think maybe let me read the question so that it goes a bit quicker. Okay, so on number 1, which of the following best describes you, and why have you joined us today? I'm interested in starting a mining business. I'm active entrepreneur in mining. I'm an active entrepreneur looking to break into mining, fully employed but interested in business principles. Very interesting that a lot of people are fully employed but interested in business principles. Okay, that's changing. Okay, we'll come back to the polls. Let me help the other people. Do you think the legislation is doing enough to help SMEs access procurement opportunities? Yes, no, somewhat. Based on the legislation principles that we've gone through today. Third question, why do you think mines are looking to expand their local procurement strategies? Reactive economy, reactive social, proactive economy, proactive social, all or a combination of the above. The fourth question, at which stage of procurement process do you think most SMEs fail? Pre-assessment, pre-qualification, audit, and other. Other would be interesting for the person to tell us what is the other element where they feel SMEs are failing. And then last question, have you ever been part of an enterprise and supply development program? Yes, no, or I've applied but got rejected. Also a good one for the person that applied and got rejected to tell us maybe why they got rejected and who they applied to.
Yeah, absolutely. Ladies, feel free to comment in the chat, and some of these we will revisit in the Q&A at the end. Yeah, I think we've got a good amount that has answered the poll. So Keitumetse, you can can proceed. I'm going to close the poll shortly.
Thanks, Xavier. Let me just, I think you need to close the poll. Okay, there you go. No, there you go. I can move my slide. Okay, so now going back to our procurement process and really looking at the feedback when it comes to our procurement processes. The value chain, where are we and where are SMEs in the value chain? And where are mining companies, or where are these corporates supporting economic development? And I think really in the feedback, what I wanted to do here is not go through the theory, but also for us to just go through what I think should probably be the solutions, what I think should be the recommendations of getting through these challenges that we face as small businesses, and what I really think should be happening and what is currently happening when it comes to that feedback when we're trying to get procurement opportunities. And also, I think also this is where we look at and explore the word local. Local in support of sustainable economic development. What is the local that we are really looking at? And as SMEs, are we also looking at these opportunities in the right places? Because as we all know, mining houses are very big on their own mining communities, and local really does, it has different meanings. So really, where I think local comes into play and what the local includes is the level of participation by local citizens in that company, which also includes ownership, management, and employment. So within the mining houses, where the locals that live within those communities can participate, not only participate, own the companies and employ, is where we should be looking at. Local should also include the level of value addition, really distinguishing between locally produced products and manufactured products and services versus internationally produced products and services. Often this becomes a very sticky one, especially I know when you're trying to get big equipment or yellow plants, often we struggle to get some plants within the confines of the country, never mind the local environment. And some people have even complained that there are services, I used to do a lot of work in Lephalale, there are services that you have to go to Joburg for that are not within the Lephalale region. So really it comes back to where is the value addition, and are we doing enough to make sure that the value addition is within the local confinements? And also the geographic location of the company, differentiating whether a supplier is located within the vicinity of the mine, nationally, the head office, or beyond, especially for a lot of companies that sit in the regions and in the mining communities. They're always complaining that companies often go and get tenders using fictitious addresses of the local geographical region, but they don't necessarily reside there, and the locals don't know them. So I think within those three aspects, you have to also, when you are looking at tender opportunities, consider the level of participation within the local citizens. You need to consider the value addition within the locality, as well as the geographic location of the company, and especially your company that is trying to get the tender opportunity, or that is trying to apply for that specific tender. And really addressing the information gap and managing the tender processes. I think also important to go back there. How the tender processes are managed, and how we address the information gap between mining houses and SMMEs involved. We've already seen that the regulatory frameworks, they play a role in incentivizing for local procurement. However, because of the issues that we've already identified, i.e. capacity and so forth, it often doesn't happen as it should. So really, how do we then go and get consensus about supporting key players that are within the local markets? Leveraging local platforms. I think also that becomes very, very important, where what mining houses don't do is put together like companies to be able to procure at a level that is required. I'm a huge believer in partnerships, especially when companies are still small or still trying to get within the doors or still trying to create name for themselves. I'm a huge believer in leveraging local platforms and partnerships between ourselves, putting together what we have, and probably between ourselves, putting in partnerships, we are most likely to give the mining houses and give and be able to prove that we can actually access the procurement opportunity at the right capacity through the partnerships that we have. From a value creation and a local support perspective, one of the things that we often also speak about, closed tenders. The closed tenders have really become an issue for small SMMEs because you often don't know that these opportunities exist. And this is why even today, SMMEs don't know themselves about opportunities through subcontracting and so forth, because there's a huge gap of information shared between the mining houses, the people that are getting the contracts, and the SMMEs trying to access these contracts. So I think what mining houses need to do needs to be a regulated thing or a legislated thing. Tenders need to be announced publicly on public platforms, because at this point, you really don't have any public platform that can give you the right opportunities of tenders, and they don't give you the closed tenders either. One of the things that also would create value and add to the value creation is for some tenders to be very regulatory and mandatory to add in the local elements as a must. So there's certain things that really, if there is no local element to it, they shouldn't even continue. And this is the only way I think SMMEs will probably get opportunity in it. Also, tracking spend of suppliers locally. We have BE and we have ESD and we have preferential procurements in the mining houses, but no one actually tracks the spend of local, the spend from local suppliers and mining companies. We don't have that data from the millions or the billions that they spend annually on supply and procurement. We don't actually know what percentage is being spent on local suppliers unless the mining house themselves voluntarily give us that information. So I think from addressing an information gap perspective, that should also be information that is probably readily available from the mining houses, that we can also keep them very honest about their spend on local suppliers. And then my last, I think also a point that I just want to make, not my last point, in supporting local suppliers where the capacity is too low. Where I feel, or what I feel should be happening there, when SMMEs come in, especially as a new company and you have no track record, mining houses, when they're issuing contracts, should give SMMEs, whether it's through subcontracting or through direct contracting, guaranteed volumes of supply to ensure this not only helps with the cash flow issue, but it also helps for planning purposes for the specific SMME that has been given the contract. And then we should let go of short-term contracts on SMMEs. Short-term contracts are a killer to SMEs because when those contracts end, we find ourselves almost at the verge of hanging ourselves because then we don't have means to continue in our businesses. Personally, I would really, really advocate for minimum 2-year contract for an SME to enable you to have a track record and to learn from that specific contract that you are doing with that specific mine. And then capacity building. We already have initiatives that assist in the capacity building of SMEs, and these happen through ESD, enterprise and supply development, as well as CSI initiatives sometimes. So I really, really think that mining houses should have a huge focus and should have, above and beyond the regulatory amount that they need to spend for ESD initiatives, they should really have development initiatives in the form of small loans, mentorship, training, and just trying to build capacity of the local SMEs in that specific region or in that specific element and aspect. My next point, working to increase local supplies. What are we doing in that regard? Pooling purchasing to help drive local manufacturing. So really this goes back to what I was talking about in terms of the partnerships. Where we build partnerships locally, we are able to pool, purchase at discounts, and we're able to get better pricing from purchasing, and we are able to really just help each other upskill our own businesses and upskill our own entrepreneurial skills and leverage off buying power and influence the mining houses and essentially influence the mining houses to increase local businesses within the regions. Also, going back to my last point. Okay, my slide. Okay, there you go. The how. How are we really going to do it? From a mining house perspective, how are they going to be creating opportunities for SMEs? From an SME perspective, how are we going to make sure that we are building capacity to be able to supply to the mining houses as and when required? You know, the roles, we should really be defining roles of actors to increase the local procurement spends, and really the actors in this playing field is the mining house and the SME, no one else. And what defining the roles would really do, and really defining and holding each other accountable, it remains key to the challenge of increasing local procurement. And you know, McKinsey did a study with the government once, and really they said government and industry actions on regulation, supply chains, labor productivity, and industry collaborations can reduce capital and operating costs by more than 50%, creating a win-win for companies through increased savings and for governments through increased revenue transfers, resulting from increased company revenues based on savings incurred. So you'll see, importantly, mining houses alone will have limited success in achieving broad economic benefits through local procurement, and require the associations with government and the businesses to be able to get the local procurement from this side. So really, from an SME perspective, we need to help each other in creating and building the capacity. Alone is very difficult to do. Alone, it's going to be very difficult to try and get to where we are trying to get in the time that we're trying to get to. So really the partnerships and the information share, because SMEs often have this mentality that if I tell her about that opportunity, they might just give it to her. No, club together. Mines love joint ventures, because in joint ventures, companies hold themselves accountable and you hold each other accountable, and you want to prove yourself. I worked last year actually with a company, 2 women-owned companies that were both in the trucking business. Excuse me. So in the trucking business, One had about 5 trucks. The other had also about 5 trucks. There was a tender that went out in 2019. A tender went out to move coal, but what was required there was 17 trucks to move that coal. The ladies came together to partner and said, together we can give you 10 trucks, but if you assist us and give us capacity to buy additional trucks, we will together be able to execute the project. At that specific point in time, I can tell you now the mining company gave them the funding to purchase the additional 7 trucks, and they're still repaying that loan because they're fulfilling that contract successfully with the required 17 trucks, and through the partnerships that they built for themselves, they are now running one of the biggest trucking companies that are moving coal in South Africa. So which really shows you that partnerships work very well within SMEs and businesses, and we can only address the gaps together. We cannot do it individually, and we really have to support each other in doing this doing this local procurement thing. And also we have to evaluate what it really means to have local procurement done locally. And we have to evaluate at the end of it all net social, environment, and economic impacts of local procurement. You know, often when I do initiatives in this space, impact becomes a huge factor, because we need to measure what we are trying to do, and we need to measure every single initiative that we do within this space. So even for yourselves as SMEs, when you are getting into these opportunities, you need to also tell the mining house, this is the impact that this business is going to have in my local environment, in my social environment, in my finances, and South Africa as a whole. It has a ripple effect. So you have to be able, even when you are requesting for the assistance, where your capacity is not enough, you have to say, at my capacity now, if I'm given this contract, this is the impact that my company is going to have, locally, nationally, whatever. And then once you give me support to increase the capacity, the impact that it's going to make in my immediate environment, local environment, municipality, nationally is going to be this. So you have to also show a little bit of how, if you are going to be helped, the jump between where you are starting off and where you are going to land up at the time that you are going to get this assistance from the mining company. So really at this point, and I think we're probably running out of time, so let me close on the session, and then we can take a couple of more questions before we close completely. It is it's everyone's role to ensure that local procurement happens. 2, don't be scared to do your research. Phone the people you need to phone, email the people that you need to email, LinkedIn message the people that you need to LinkedIn message, but find people around you. And this is why in the beginning I was really commending WiMSA for the mentorship. You have to find people around you that know and have been through the process to help you through the process. There are lessons that you really don't have to go through yourself, that someone else has already gone through, that you can really learn and take from. So I think with that, before now I'm going to start preaching. Eusavia is going to stop me from preaching now. So really before let me stop preaching, but do your research and always learn from the people that have done it. Don't be scared to ask. Ask and learn. That's how you learn. You learn by asking, you learn from researching, and it really the worst that can happen is the person says, no, I don't want to help you. And then you just move on to someone else. And you have this beautiful network where you can always just come back to and ask questions and hold them accountable to what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to help the women in mining in South Africa. So I'm going to pause there And then I think I've gone through my recommendations without having to go through the slide. So I'll pause there and then we can take questions before we close.
Awesome. Thank you, Keitumetse. Thank you very much. Really insightful. And you know what you're talking about? I enjoy the preaching. Really, really cool stuff. But I think it's really, you look at the chat box resonating with so many of the people on the call. And yeah, I mean, absolutely stand on the shoulders of giants, right? I just wanted to hear the result of the poll. I think you guys should see it on screen at the moment. So yeah, interesting. I'm just gonna take a minute to go through this. Actually, a lot of people are fully employed who are joining us today, interested in, I think, the ins and outs. We're all so keen about one day starting a business, but really don't know where to start. So I hope this has been some good motivation and inspiration and education for some people on the call. Do you think legislation is doing enough to help SMEs access procurement opportunities? Largely in the no and somewhat portions, very few people saying yes. So definitely a perception out there that legally more can be done to support SMEs. Why do you think mines are looking to expand their local procurement strategies? So also largely sitting in responding to community pressure. I think we definitely see that in terms of communities coming out strong to ask for it. And I think, yeah, we could probably talk a lot about that. At which stage of the procurement process do you think most SMEs fail? Pre-assessment, pre-qualification, audit, and other. Most people pre-assessment. So I think just getting a foot through the door. And if anybody wants to put that other in the chat box, please do feel free. And lastly, have you ever been part of enterprise and supply development? Overwhelming majority of this crowd has not been, and a very small amount have been. And maybe I can pause there, Keitumetse, and just ask you, you know, for your thoughts around the results here. Anything interesting or insightful that you see?
I think very insightful. I'll start right at the beginning with the first question. And I'm going to say to the people that are active entrepreneurs in mining, there's really a lot of opportunities from an ESD perspective and supports that mines are giving to SMEs. So I'd really encourage the companies that are already in the space to take advantage of them. I know Exaro is doing it, Harmony is doing it, even Sasol is doing it. Do the research, apply and get those opportunities. And for the people that are looking to break in or are fully employed and interested in business principles as well, you know, just start. You know, really to those people, I just say start where you are with what you have. Obviously don't leave your full employment if you don't have a plan. Put a strategy into place and really start what your dream or your career and what your entrepreneurial career. And I really want to, for people that want to learn business principles, learn from the ones that have already done it. And there's a lot of, I think, naysayers about in our society in terms of entrepreneurship and business and starting a business. Don't listen to the naysayers because you'll end up not doing what you want to do. I think important to just also learn and read quite a lot. There's a lot of books that you can read that teach you the basic business principles that you need to be able to be a sustainable business. So really read a lot and do your research and start. From a procurement perspective and legislation perspective, I think my views there, with the people saying somewhat, because there is legislation that are helping with procurement opportunity. Our problem is how that is being implemented within the mining houses. So I think legislation has put enough tools in place to help with local procurement, but we need to overcome the challenge of how each mining house is actually using the tools and the legislation in giving SMEs opportunities, which is something we definitely have to tackle on. And going into number 3, I think definitely a lot of the guys are on reactive social. but also I'm seeing the encouragingly so, if that's a word. I'm seeing a lot of mining houses that are moving towards the heart of it and moving towards giving procurement opportunities and having procurement strategies that will impact on SMEs. So I think moving forward, we'll probably start seeing a lot more of the reactive, and I look forward to seeing in a year's time where we are looking here. So I'm also here, I'm with the people that say a combination at this point. And at the stage of procurement process where SMEs fail, I think probably a combination of pre-assessment and audit. And based on my experience and based on my experience of SMEs that make it to audit stage, but because of compliance issues, fail. That number for me, that 11% would definitely increase because a lot of the guys that make it through to the audit fail within the audit because of a compliance issue or a legislative issue. So I think 50-50 for me of a pre-assessment and an audit. And then also for enterprise and supply development, like I said, the 49% that I've said have not been part of it or applied to it, there's two elements of it. So you don't have to be a supplier of the mining house to take advantage of the enterprise and supply development initiatives. You fall in the E of ESG, so you become the enterprise development part, where if you are a supplier of a mining house, you would then fall in the S of ESG, so you would then become the supplier development partner. So take advantage of ESG. I would really encourage everyone to take advantage of it. I mean, it is free support and development, and all we want to do is build SMEs that are sustainable, sustainability being the word. So really, I would encourage the people that haven't tried to access those opportunities within the mining space, or even other industries in engineering and other industries that everyone is involved in here.
Thanks for those insights, Keitumetse, really interesting. I'm going to open up to some questions now, and I do see a hand up. Toli Moahi, you want to give us your question or comment?
Okay, thank you so much. I'll just want to applaud WiMSA for this informative session tonight, and as well, you know, the presentation Keitumetse, it was just amazing, very insightful as well. I'm currently in the mining and the actual mining, and it was not easy, I can say, ladies, to penetrate that industry. From you getting the vendor, it was a hassle. But you know, you fight until, like Keitumetse said, you know, you don't give up. But I wanted to find out from Keitumetse, do you have maybe a way to help, especially women? I know that the mining houses don't have much confidence in women, and I saw the list of your compliance, which is somehow not fair, because women were only given the opportunity recently. They might not have the experience and the expertise that they require, and automatically they don't meet the requirements of the mining houses. And I think if maybe they can be at least a little bit lenient, not necessary to give us maybe too small jobs, if I may say so, but you know, something that you'll have a program like you mentioned, I think the incubation, so that you can say, I'm building you up because we want to include you in our procurement. But the other thing is that I would like you guys to maybe explain. When we talk about local, I think it's been a problem as well, because you'll find that you are in a province, but the mine is in another town. and therefore you don't qualify now to maybe to supply that mine because you are not a local, and it becomes another barrier for us as women to grow in the industry. So those are the few comments that I would really like us maybe to get the clarity or the response. Are you doing something in terms of that? And then the last one is that I know that the government has the regulations of the 30% and 40% that is set aside for women. I'm not sure for mining houses, are they also required to have to reinvest certain project, or is just only local, which includes everyone? It doesn't have maybe youth or women. So those are the few questions that I would really like the panel to answer. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try and remember all of them. Let's go back to the challenges that the women have in getting procurement opportunities from an experience perspective and from not having the right experience initially. And I think this is really where our supplier, I went back to my slide, our supplier and development programs come into play. So once you will see, once you've gone through pre-assessment, and like you did mention that you have to work hard to get to pre-assessment and eventually get into pre-qualification. Where you don't qualify, also this is also where you are notified that you don't qualify most times. Very, very important, I think, especially for the women that are not getting it right, to ask for feedback as to what it is that made them not qualify to move into verification or audit. And then you would move into, then once you've asked for feedback and you've corrected those, the things that made you not initially qualify, then you can go back for reevaluation. And once you go for reevaluation, you can also, this is where you can also ask that the mining house assist you through supplier development program initiatives, and please not incubation. That's also a story for another day. I don't believe in incubation. I believe in initiatives that help SMEs become sustainable based on the specific need that the SME needs. So once you have reevaluated, then you can then ask to please go into a supply development program where you can be helped with your specific needs in the business. Because I know there are mining houses that focus on specific needs of a business and they don't do a sausage machine exercise where it's a one size fits all, because not all businesses are the same or require the same interventions to help them to get to a level where they can procure for the mine. So as an SME at that point, you also have to be very, very open about what your challenges are so that they can also assist you appropriately on the challenges that you are facing in your company. Then with the 30% that the government has posed, it also goes back to what I was talking about. The legislation is there. The legislation to help with local procurement to women and even youth, it's really there. What we need to address now, and probably what we definitely need to challenge the mining houses with, is information and stats to tell us how they are doing in terms of adhering to the 30% procurement to youth and women-owned businesses. So if they don't give us these stats, we'll never know what the spend on women-owned businesses and local businesses are. So it's our responsibility, I think, to really challenge the mining houses to give us what they are currently spending on women and how they are doing on local procurement and what percentage of their supply chain is going to local procurement. And also with the locality issue, where is the local? What does it mean for them to, when they say local, is it a municipality thing? If the mining house is in Carltonville, is the local Carltonville and Far West? Is the local Gauteng? Like, where is the local? So also when you are looking at that local term, you also have to find out, I think also probably our challenge as SMEs, to find out what radius do they deem local and to what extent do they go when they say local. is it a region thing? Is it a municipality thing? And is it first price if you are within the municipality? So I think really stuff that we need to challenge the mining houses on. Probably things we can't answer ourselves now, but we definitely need to challenge the mining houses and come back with answers afterwards. Because these are things I think SMMEs, specifically people that are in the mining industry now, want to know. So something we need to challenge mining houses on and come back with answers.
Thank you, Keitumetse, for that. We are fast running out of time, guys, and I think it's a really, really awesome session. I just want to hand over to Bryony, who's going to address some of the questions in the chat about the networking.
Thanks, Yusavia. I think one of the key things that's come out is, I seem to be reverberating. I think one of the key things that's come out is that people are looking for an opportunity to network with each other and possibly identify opportunities to partner with each other and just learn from each other. And so what I've suggested in the chat is, if there's interest, what we can do is set up a LinkedIn group specifically for WiMSA entrepreneurs. And we can figure out how to encourage that networking and those conversations. Sorry, those are my dogs in the background. So what we're going to do is we'll sort out an invitation to everybody that registered to attend this event. And I'm going to take the liberty of asking Keitumetse if she would be comfortable being part of that group, because we would love to learn more from you. And I know that at some point you are looking at launching some opportunities to individual businesses, and I may be speaking a little bit ahead of turn. But I think there is so much that we can learn from you, and I really want to invite you back to do some more masterclasses with us, because there has been such an overwhelming response to this event. And I think there is a huge need for startups, for young entrepreneurs, for people who are trying to build their businesses to unpack more of these butts and learn more and network with each other and get the opportunity to speak to people who have been there and done that. Because being in business is really hard, and the first 5 years of being in business is incredibly tough. And having a support network to learn from would be very valuable. So we'll send out an invitation in the next couple days to everybody that registered. I know there have been a few people who've said, can we do it on WhatsApp? I'm really going to suggest let's keep it to LinkedIn. It's a professional platform. If you're not on LinkedIn, you should be on LinkedIn. It's a great place to be networking. And so that's what we as WiMSA can offer, is a specific LinkedIn group to enable people to connect with each other and start a conversation around how to work with each other.
Absolutely, I think that's a good idea, Brownie. That's a brilliant idea, and you know where my passion is, SME development in the country. I always say my calling is on SME development, and that's why I find myself heading a company called I'm an Entrepreneur. So I think definitely something we can do. And let's help each other and let's share knowledge.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I just want to say, Keitumetse, it's been wonderful having you join us. We met probably a year and a bit ago, and your energy and enthusiasm and your support for enterprise development was phenomenal back then. It's even more phenomenal now, and I think you've given us so much to think about. And my experience in enterprise development as a business coach for one of your competitors is that where people fail very quickly is in lack of operational systems and being able to deliver. And that's really what the mines are looking for. There are so many things that we've talked about today, but if you cannot operationally deliver, it ruins the sustainability of any relationship. So being able to put systems together is the hardest thing to do in the first couple of years, but at about year 3 or 4, it becomes crucial to keeping your business going.
Absolutely.
Okay, I could ramble on. You and I love talking about these topics. But yes, Sylvia, thank you for making this happen, for taking the lead, and thank you to everybody who's joined us this evening.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much, Keitumetse. I really appreciate it. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of follow-up questions, comments, and so on, and I will share that with you. Thank you, Bryony and Nikki, for assisting Nikki in her absence to get this one up and running. And to all our participants, thank you for joining us. This is the first of a series of these. So as Bryony said, there's a lot more to it. Other aspects that we will cover in the year. We're looking at having a few more of these in the year. And Keitumetse, I hope you'll join us for some of those in the future. And yeah, so I will leave any last closing words with you, Keitumetse.
All right. No, thanks to everyone. And I think I look forward to engaging with everyone. I think I've earned my nickname, the business doctor, Keitumetse Lekaba. So I have to use it on SMMEs. So I really look forward to engaging with SMMEs, with sharing knowledge, with sharing my expertise and what I know, and sharing information. And thank you to everyone for coming through. And it's been really good. And I know an hour is never enough for these conversations. And we apologize for taking from your family time and your evening time. But thank you to WiMSA also for the opportunity to share, and for me to share what I've learned in my journey with the entrepreneurs. And I look forward to sharing some more, and I'll definitely engage on LinkedIn and in the group. So thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank
Can
you.
we
Thanks,
please give you a round of applause? Would everybody please take their mute off and just give Keitumetse a round of applause?